In the depths of the battle barge, preparations were underway for the feast of the Emperor's Ascension, known in ancient times as Christmas. Even in the grim darkness of the far future, Space Marines honored this sacred tradition, though in their own austere way. Captain Zavis stood in the ship's main gathering hall, which the crew had adorned with modest decorations, primarily imperial eagles and sacred scriptural banners. The traditional colors of red and green seemed particularly fitting, given the presence of both blood angels and salamanders. "Brothers," Zavis addressed the assembled Marines, "even as we journey through the warp, we pause to honor this holy day the Emperor protects, and we remember his sacrifice." The Salamanders, true to their chapter's traditions of humanity and fellowship, had prepared gifts for their battle brothers. Tech Marine Ferrum had crafted small ceremonial blades for each Marine, working through several sleep cycles to ensure each weapon was perfectly forged and inscribed with prayers of protection. Brother Sergeant Raphael, though initially reserved, had embraced the ceremony. He shared with his hosts a flask of his chapter's sacred blood wine, a rare honor that spoke volumes of the bond that had formed between the Space Marines. "Among the Blood Angels," Raphael explained, his voice solemn, "I share this wine to remember our Primarch's sacrifice. Today we share it with you, brothers of the Salamanders, for we are all sons of the Emperor." Even the rogue trader, temporarily released from his quarters under heavy guard, participated in the ceremonies. He had surprised everyone by presenting Captain Zavis with an ancient star chart of nearby sectors, information that could prove valuable in their journey. "Consider it a gesture of good faith," the trader said with his characteristic smile. "After all, 'tis the season, as they said in ancient Terra." Sergeant Talon organized a ritual combat tournament, a traditional way for Space Marines to honor holy days. The training cages rang with the sound of ceremonial duels, each fought with precision and respect, rather than lethal intent. As the celebration continued, small groups formed throughout the hall. The navigator, normally isolated due to his mutation, was welcome to join a group of Marines listening to Chaplain Victor recite ancient tales of the Emperor's ascension. The ship's crew, though maintaining their stations, rotated in shifts to participate in the festivities. Tech Marine Ferrum had set aside his studies of the mysterious star chart to share stories of Mars with younger battle brothers, speaking of the Red Planet's own winter traditions dating back to the age of technology. His mechadendrites occasionally gesturing to emphasize particularly interesting points. The feast itself was simple but meaningful. Nutrient-rich combat rations prepared with extra care by the ship's provisions officers, supplemented with small luxuries from the Salamander's own supplies. Each Marine raised a toast with blessed water, their enhanced bodies having little use for alcohol save for ceremonial blood wine. Captain Zavis watched it all with quiet satisfaction. In the midst of their perilous mission, this moment of brotherhood and tradition strengthened their resolve. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, his warriors would face them with renewed purpose. To the Emperor, he raised his cup in a final toast, his voice carrying across the gathering hall. To absent brothers, and to the sacred duty that drives us forward. "To the Emperor," came the thunderous response, the sound echoing through the battle barge's corridors. As the celebration wound down, Marines returned to their duties with lifted spirits. Even in the swirling madness of the warp, the light of tradition and brotherhood burned bright, a beacon of humanity in the darkness of space. The rogue trader, being escorted back to his quarters, smiled to himself. He had seen many things in his travels, but the sight of Space Marines celebrating an ancient Terran festival was something truly remarkable. Perhaps there was hope for humanity after all, even in these dark times. Brother Sergeant Raphael retired to his assigned chambers, touching the Blood Angel's insignia on his armor. "Merry Christmas, my fallen brothers," he whispered. "Your sacrifice is not forgotten." He placed a small candle in his window, a tradition from his home world, letting its light shine into the void. The battle barge continued its journey through the warp, its occupants renewed in spirit and purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the darkness of the void, they had found a moment of light, a reminder of what they fought to protect: humanity's traditions, brotherhood, and hope for the future. Though deep in their perilous warp journey, the great battle barge had been prepared for this sacred occasion. Unlike many other Space Marine chapters, the Salamanders maintained close ties with their mortal families, and a section of the vessel had been specially outfitted to accommodate these civilian guests before their departure. The family's quarters rang with the sound of children's laughter, a rare and precious thing aboard a warship. Mothers, sisters, and wives gathered in small groups, sharing tales and traditional Nocturnian recipes they'd brought from home. Their dark skin glowed in the artificial light, and their red eyes, a mark of their homeworld, sparkled with joy as they watched their children play. In one corner, a group of young boys and girls darted between makeshift cover, wielding toy bolters that Tech Marine Ferrum had helped them craft from spare parts and debris. The toys had been lovingly assembled from scraps of metal, redundant pipe fittings, and bits of harmless machinery, then painted in proud salamander green. "For the Emperor," a small boy shouted, his toy bolter making convincing sound effects as he played at being a space marine like his father. "Suffer not the Xenos to live," his sister replied with equal enthusiasm, her own toy weapon decorated with small purity seals made from scraps of parchment. The women gathered around shared tables laden with traditional Nocturnian feast dishes, spicy, hearty fare suited to their volcanic homeworld. They whispered and laughed among themselves, sharing news from different settlements of Nocturne and discussing their proud warriors. "Did you see how Thomas has grown?" one mother whispered to another, nodding toward a young salamander. "He's as tall as his father now." "And twice as handsome," another added with a knowing smile, causing a ripple of laughter through the group. Captain Zavis watched this scene with quiet pride. The Salamander's connection to their mortal families was viewed as unusual by other chapters, but he knew it was their greatest strength. It reminded them of why they fought, not for glory or conquest, but for humanity itself. Brother Sergeant Raphael, the Blood Angel, stood beside him, his expression unreadable behind his helm. "Your chapter's ways are different from ours," he observed, "but I see the wisdom in it. They give you something tangible to protect." A small girl, no more than 6 years old, suddenly broke away from the play battle and ran up to Raphael. Without hesitation, she held up her toy bolter. "Would you like to play, sir?" "You can be the Xenos," she offered innocently. The Blood Angel stood frozen for a moment, then, to everyone's surprise, knelt down to her level. "I would be honored, little one," he said, his voice gentler than any had heard before. "Though perhaps I could be a battle brother instead." The girl beamed and grabbed his armored hand, leading him toward the other children, who stared in awe at the crimson-armored giant joining their game. Meanwhile, Tech Marine Ferrum had set up a small workshop where he helped children modify and repair their toys. His mechadendrites moved with surprising gentleness as he attached a new sight to a toy bolter or adjusted the sound mechanism of another. "Remember," he instructed solemnly, though there was warmth in his augmented voice, "a warrior must always maintain their equipment, even in play." The rogue trader, watching from his guarded position, found himself moved by the scene. In all his years traversing the galaxy, he'd never seen anything quite like this. The galaxy's greatest warriors celebrating with their families, children playing at war while surrounded by those who waged it in truth. As the festivities continued, the battle barge's corridors echoed with sounds rarely heard in a warship: laughter, singing, the patter of running children's feet, and the joyous conversations of families reunited. Even in the grim darkness of the far future, even in the midst of their dangerous mission, the light of human connection burned bright, warming the cold void of space with its glow. The women began teaching the children traditional Nocturnian songs, their voices rising in harmony as they sang of their volcanic homeworld and the great deeds of their warrior sons. The Space Marines joined in, their deep voices adding a powerful foundation to the melody. In this moment, they were not just warriors, but fathers, brothers, and sons, celebrating an ancient tradition with those they held dear. Captain Zavis moved through the corridors of the battle barge, his heavy ceramite boots somehow making little sound despite his massive frame. The sounds of celebration still echoed through the halls, children's laughter, women's songs, and the mock battles being fought with toy bolters. As he turned a corner, he came upon two young boys engaged in an animated dispute, their toy bolters temporarily forgotten at their feet. "I'm going to be Captain Zavis," declared one boy, puffing out his chest. "No, I am." "I already called it," the other protested, his red eyes flashing with determination. "Well, I'm taller, so I should be captain. But I have a green toy bolter just like his." Zavis stood quietly watching, grateful for his helmet hiding the smile that crept across his scarred face. In all his centuries of service, all the battles fought and honors won. Somehow this childish argument over who would pretend to be him touched something deep in his warrior's heart. Continuing to his quarters, his mind wandered to darker thoughts. How many children had lost fathers in their recent battles? How many more might be orphaned by whatever lay ahead of them? The weight of command pressed heavily upon him. Finally reaching his personal chambers, Zavis sealed the door behind him. The room was spartanly furnished as befitting a space marine, but a few personal touches marked it as his own. A fragment of volcanic rock from Nocturne, his first bolter mounted on the wall, and a small shrine to the Emperor. With practiced movements, he began the ritual of removing his armor, each piece carefully placed on its stand. As the helmet came off, his face was revealed, dark skin bearing the coal-black complexion of Nocturne's people, red eyes that glowed with enhanced genetics, and countless scars earned in service to the Emperor. Zavis moved to the shrine and knelt before it. He lit the sacred incense, its familiar scent filling the chamber, and began his evening prayers. "Emperor, protect us," he intoned, his deep voice barely above a whisper. "Guide us through the void ahead. Grant us strength for the battles to come. Watch over our families, and—" He paused, emotion threatening to break through his disciplined demeanor. "Accept the souls of our fallen brothers into your light." Rising from his prayers, he moved to a small cabinet and removed a bottle of Nocturnian fire whiskey, a rare indulgence he allowed himself only on the most sacred occasions. Pouring a measure into a simple metal cup, he raised it in a silent toast. "To the fallen," he whispered, taking a small sip. The liquid burned like the fires of his homeworld. "To Brother Karen, who died holding the line. To Brother Vex, who gave his life protecting our wounded. To Brother," he continued, naming each Marine lost in their recent battles, honoring their memory. Setting down the cup, he moved to his viewport, watching the swirling madness of the warp beyond the Geller field. Somewhere out there lay their destination, and with it, perhaps answers to the mysteries they pursued. But at what cost? The sounds of celebration still filtered through his door. Children playing, families laughing, life going on despite the darkness that surrounded them. It reminded him of why the Salamanders maintained their close family bonds, why they fought not just for duty or glory, but for humanity itself. "We are the Emperor's fire," he said to himself, an old salamander's prayer coming unbidden to his lips. "We are his heat in the cold void. We are his light in the darkness. We are his warriors, and we shall know no fear." With that, Captain Zavas prepared himself for rest, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, his warriors and their families would face them together, as they always had. The battle barge continued its journey through the warp, carrying within it not just humanity's finest warriors, but also their hopes, their loves, and their future. In his quarters, Captain Zavas finally allowed sleep to take him, his dreams filled with both the laughter of children and the thunder of bolters, the dual nature of a salamander's life made manifest in his slumber.